Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. Okay, I am so excited to talk about this episode. I actually had somebody message me and say, can you talk about making hard decisions and making big life decisions? So I've made a big life decision in my life. I left my career of news and I thought, okay, I can talk about this. And one of the big things that helped me when I was making that decision was doing some serious journaling and asking myself some serious questions to help just get my mind straight and get clarity about who I wanted to be, where I wanted to be. And so I want to share those questions with you. But before we get there, I have a couple more tips. When we make a big decision, I think we make the error of calling it a life decision. We're like, this is going to be a big life decision. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? This is so huge. And the weight of calling it a life decision is heavy because it's your life. And it seems like, oh my gosh, this is the decision that I'm going to make that's going to impact my life forever. And sure, there are a lot of decisions that you can make that will impact your life forever, of course. But I think we're putting too much weight into some of these decisions we have to make. So my very first tip is to back up a little bit from thinking that this is the last decision you're going to ever make for your entire life. I think really what we need to do instead is say, this is a decision I'm going to make in my life. Yeah, this might put me on a different path for now. When I decided to leave news, one of the thoughts that I had was, I'm not making a decision for my life to leave news forever necessarily, but I knew that at that moment in time, it was not working for my life. And so that decision was based on not necessarily a full life. My life has not completely played out yet, but I knew that at that moment in time in 2017, that the best thing for me was going to be to leave my job, to start this podcast, and to be able to grow this community and impact people in a emotional, mental health type of way instead of the way that I was making an impact. And so I didn't look at that as this is the last decision of my life ever. I looked at it as a decision that's going to impact me today. The other thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is pros and cons lists. I love pros and cons lists. Of course, we all do. Have you used a pros and cons list before? But I think one of the important things to understand about a pros and cons list is that those pros and cons can change. I actually just I was cleaning out my room and I found in a big pile of papers in a box hidden away somewhere, I found my old pros and cons list that I had written before I moved to Southern Oregon. And some of my cons were about, I don't know anybody in the community. Another con was about money. The issue, or what I want to bring up here, is that those cons changed into pros. I've now lived in this community for a decade. It's unbelievable that I could be that old. I don't know how I got a decade of living in when I'm 21. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I moved here, and that what I perceived was going to be a con, that I didn't know anybody, it's now a pro. I know the community very well. The other issues that were cons, they have turned into pros. So I think that's important to realize as well when you're making that pros and cons list. Okay, the question time. Some of the questions that I asked myself and I journaled furiously about when I left my job in 2017 were, first of all, what am I passionate about? I think that we can get really caught up in, especially our generation, of growing up with, what are you going to be when you grow up? What does that look like? So I always was thinking, when I grow up, I'm going to be a news anchor. That is what I do. There's no other option for me. So I needed to step back away from the identity of what my job title was so that I could discover what my future could look like. And I think when we ask ourselves, what am I passionate about? Then we can say, oh, yes, I am passionate about news, but that's because I'm passionate about people. That's because I'm passionate about making sure people are well educated. That's because I'm passionate about storytelling. There's so much more there than a job title. So whatever that job title might be for you, there might be elements away from the job title, that you like to create things, that you like to write things, that you like to be with people and around people, depending on what your job is, that you like the thrill of making sales goals or whatever it is. It might be more than just a job title alone, if that makes sense. So what am I passionate about? Get your journal out and just don't do the pros and cons yet. Just think about what you're passionate about. Write about what you're passionate about. Secondly, how do I want to make a difference? Again, I think this goes back to that idea of we have to get out of our heads thinking, okay, this is my title, this is my identity. I could go into a whole different section of identity. I have podcasts on identity, so go check those out. But I think when we get so caught up with our identity, for so long, since I was in third grade, my thought was, I'm going to be a journalist. And then when you start that mindset at 9 years old, 8 years old, and then you find yourself in your early 30s and you're like, wait, I'm making a change in my life. That's really, really difficult. So if you ask yourself, how do I want to make a difference? You can back away from an identity maybe you've been holding on to through a job, or there's so many identities we can have, through motherhood, whatever it is. We can walk away from the identity itself and realize that we are our own individual. And that's why one of the reasons I always say I'm just a person at the beginning of this podcast. I just like to say I'm just a person, because away from all of the identities of being a mom and a daughter and a journalist and a storyteller and all of the things, I'm just a human. I'm just a human being. So walk away from the identity and start to ask yourself, how do I want to make a difference? At the time when I was answering this question in 2017, some of the things I was considering included, I want to empower people. I'd been empowering people with information. I wanted to empower people with different types of information. I wanted to kind of be like a safe place for people to go when their hearts felt heavy, but also with tools to get out of that feeling of and to be able to move forward in that. So I, again, journaled furiously out of this question, how do I want to make a difference? And I think going back to that will help guide you in making the decision of what you should do with your life, that big decision, where you want to go next. Next question, what am I good at? What you're good at does matter in the decisions that you make, because, and it plays directly into what you're passionate about and how you want to make a difference. So when you ask yourself, what am I naturally good at? What are my gifts that I have? I think that can also help set you on a road toward happiness, on a road toward you in which you feel fulfilled. So it's actually kind of like a Venn diagram. I'm going to draw a Venn diagram for you here. Oh my goodness. You know what is so funny? I homeschooled my son this last year, and he called this Venn diagram a butt chart. And I am so nervous because I'm putting him in public school next year that he's going to continue to call it a butt chart. We'll see. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Okay, so if we have a Venn diagram and we're going to have one side as how do I want to make a difference? And then we have the other side as what am I good at? If we can find this sweet spot in the middle, right there, of what you're really good at, how you want to make a difference, that's going to be your impact zone. I made that up just now. That's going to be where you're able to make the biggest impact, because you are doing what you're really good at and you're making a difference, and that's going to feel really good, and that's going to light the fire for you to keep doing the work that you're doing. Okay, so those 3 questions I would ask yourself. And you know what? When I say to ask yourself what you're naturally good at, I don't think that should be something that closes off opportunities that don't include what you're naturally good at. Because maybe you just need some practice at the thing that you're not so good at. So a couple of episodes ago, I did an episode about how you don't necessarily need to be perfect at something. You just can go forward, and that's how you make the learning happen. So if you are writing, okay, I'm naturally good at office work and organization and all of this, but then you're like, but actually what I want to do is not be in an office. I want to be out hiking, but I'm not good at hiking and exploring and making videos. Maybe that's what you want to do. Then you'll get good at that. You'll just practice it and you'll get there. Okay. So in closing here, before I take comments for the podcast episode, I want to say, ask yourself these 3 questions when you're making a big decision. What am I passionate about? How do I want to make a difference? And what am I naturally good at? Journal those 3 questions down when you're making a big decision, and make sure that your big decision supports those things. Make sure that your big decision supports what you're passionate about. Make sure your big decision, even if it's not directly, make sure some way, if you move forward in this decision you're about to make sure that it helps you follow your passion and make a difference. I think when those 2 things come together, tied with what you're really good at, inherently good at, you're going to feel really good about the decision you're making and where you're moving. And I want to take your comments. What do you guys think? What are some good questions to ask yourself about before you make a big decision? Okay, I see. I'm going to scroll down here. Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay, I want you to weigh in here. If you're watching, if you're some of the few watching, can you tell me what you consider when you're making a big decision? Or how you've made a big decision in the past? One of the questions that I've been thinking about is, where do I see myself in 5 years? While I think that is a good question, I also think it goes back to this idea of making these decisions heavier than they need to be. I don't think we need to say, oh my goodness, does this support where I see myself in 5 years? This is my life decision. What's going to happen? Because I don't think decisions have to be for forever. I think even if you, in TV news, you often sign contracts. Even if you were to sign a 2-year contract, at the end of that, you can still make a different decision. This doesn't have to be your life-ending decision. This is your decision for today. This is your decision for now. This isn't the last decision you're going to make in your entire life. This is just a decision that you'll make. Maybe it will set you on a different path, but you can always revert to the original path if the new one doesn't work out. And I think this also goes back to the risk factor of making a different decision that looks a little bit different than the life that you're used to. Proficient Builder said, ask yourself this question. Is your decision part of the master plan? Is your decision part of the master plan? Okay, Proficient Builder. So you're a builder, so you're used to working with a master plan. I want to know if you've ever made a decision that didn't necessarily support the master plan in terms of what you were building. And if it was something you were like, oh, I thought that I would just add this thing. It wasn't in your original plan, but you thought adding it would be cool. And then you decided, you know what, actually it's not cool, and you tore it down. Has that ever happened? Because I think that can happen in life. And I think that's okay when it happens in life. That can happen, and then you can say, that doesn't work out, and get back on a different path. That's what I mean by, we don't have to have the weight of this like being the last decision I've ever made. Proficient Builder says, yes, I have. So it's okay in your decision-making process to make mistakes and to go back in different routes and different roads. Okay, Brittany Ploquin said, I love what you said to think about the impact that you want to make. Yes, I love that. And I know that in making business decisions and like self-employment decisions, it can be really stressful if you get away from the impact. If you're just starting to think of like, okay, I need to have this many followers on Instagram. Okay, I need to have this many episodes on my podcast. Okay, I need to make this much money. It can be really, really overwhelming to make any decisions. It can become paralyzing because you need to, I lost my train of thought because I was reading comments. Don't do those things at the same time. But it can become paralyzing when you get caught up in everything other than the impact. But when you focus in on what you want your impact to be, that's when I think it lights the fire and you move forward, and the other things come around the impact that you want to make. The other things come around the passion that you have in supporting whatever your decision was, whatever your goal or your dream was. All right, I had one more comment. Let's see where it is. Yeah, Cynthia, I love this. I love it so much. Cynthia Davison says, life changes constantly. I base it on the here and now, if that makes sense. Cynthia, it does make sense. What I really like about that is I am someone who a lot of times in the past has made decisions on what is this going to look like in the future. Let me think of what my example is. I feel like it had something to do with blogging. I feel like there was some kind of situation where I wanted to start a blog, but I was like, oh, I can't start the blog this way or call it this way because what if in the future my kids are, obviously they're going to be different ages. They're going to grow up. Because I can't call it this because then my kids are going to be grown and then it's not going to make sense. If we based life, I think if we go back to 1998 and we based life on what life was like in 1998, and we made our entire life goal and life plan on the 1998 knowledge that we had, we would not have evolved at all. We wouldn't be here on our smartphones watching this live. I wouldn't be recording a live. I would have been literally planning to make a VHS video, and I would have never been able to divert and learn new tools and technology, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that making these decisions, I love that, Cynthia, because making decisions on the here and now is so powerful because we cannot predict the future. Our decision making, we can't try to base our decisions on an unknown future. I think that's what I want to try to say. I love that, Cynthia. That was so good. Okay, Caroline LaPrince, I hope I said your last name right. Caroline LaPrince said, big decisions can be scary, especially when it's tied to making money. Oh my goodness. Yes, Caroline, you are so right about that because that can be really risky. I held a really big event in 2019 and had a lot of my own money on the line, and that was really, really scary to take that kind of a risk. And I know anytime we're taking a job, passing up a job, moving jobs, moving cross country, whatever it is, that can be really, really scary because that's tied to money. It's tied to a housing market. When you think about moving, it's tied to so many different things. I think that, again, when we focus on the impact we want to make and how we want to make a difference in the world, I think that is where we can become the most empowered. And when we're making that difference, everything follows. There's the, what is it called? This is why it's hard to do a live episode. I can't think of what it's called. But it's like where it's in sports when maybe someone will remember. It's in sports where you hit your stride and you're going and you feel passionate and you know what you're doing is right. I think when you're on that pathway and you feel that burning in your heart that when I go to work and I am a nurse or when I'm teaching first graders or when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing and you know that matters and is important, everything falls together around that. Nicole said, I use a similar diagram, but with a third circle to represent need. Is there a need for what I like to do in the industry I want to use it in? Oh my goodness, Nicole, that is so, so good. So you use a Venn diagram. Let's see if we can make a Venn diagram for that as well. I'm really glad that there's going to be a third circle because my son will not be able to call this a butt chart. Okay, so if we had a 3-circle one, let's see. I don't know. Maybe that's what it would look like. And this is the middle part where the need comes together. Okay, is there a need? How can I make a difference? How do I want to make a difference? And what am I good at? I love that. Okay, Proficient Builder says, if we procrastinate, nothing gets done. That's another really big one. Okay. Does anybody want to tell me about a risk they've made? A risk they've taken? Particularly when it's tied to money, which is super scary. Okay. All right. I am going to wrap up, but I am so thankful that you guys came here on the podcast. Oh, you know what? One more thing I think I want to say, because nobody chimed in about a risk, particularly tied to money. I saw an Oprah Winfrey quote that said something like, we do what we have to until we can afford to do what we want to. And I think that's another part. I think that's another part of, if we've made that Venn diagram, aka butt chart, that has the, okay, I want to do this. I'm really passionate about this. I'm really good at this. This is the impact that I want to make. And we know that we're not there yet in terms of saving or in terms of the risk buffer that we have monetarily. I think that's where we then make a plan to get to that place where we have that risk buffer. Okay, now I'm going to wrap up. I want to thank you guys for being here on my first ever live recording of Happiness in Progress. This was kind of fun. I've been recording the audio as well. After I turn off, I am going to put this up on the podcast. So you can rewatch it there. You can watch it on IGTV. You'll be able to watch it on Facebook Live. I think it just stays there. So quickly before I go, I just want to remind you of the 3 questions. 1, what am I passionate about? How do I want to make a difference? And what am I good at? And also, your decisions are not the end of everything. If you're taking a path or you're moving a different way, or you want to try out a different job, then you can do that knowing that there is still a safe place in a different section for you. You can always move around. You don't have to make your decision thinking it's the last decision you're going to ever make in your life. If you decide you're going to leave teaching and you're going to become a realtor, that doesn't mean you can never go back to teaching. You could go back to teaching. In my early, oh my goodness, I said I was going to wrap up. I am. But in my early 20s, I was reporting. I left reporting and I taught for a few years. And then guess what I did? I went back to reporting. It was all fine. So with that, I want to tell you, you can make hard decisions. I'm excited to hear more from you guys. I kind of liked doing this live episode, so tell me what you think about these live episodes. Maybe I'll do them more. It was really fun to be able to see in real live time your guys' comments and to be able to include them on the podcast episode. So I want to thank you guys for being here on Happiness in Progress, and I will tease to Tuesday's episode. On Tuesday, I talked to Charlie Bird. We talk about how to create a sacred, safe space for the people in our lives who are in the LGBTQ community. It's a really, really awesome conversation because Charlie Bird grew up really in a religious setting, and he grew up as a member of the LDS faith. And he had a lot of shame in his sexuality, and he was finally able to embrace his sexuality and now live loud and proud, as we talk about. And we talk about why it's so important to support the LGBT community, particularly youth, because of these rocket high suicide rates in that community. It's a really, really powerful conversation. You're going to hear it on Tuesday. And with that, I will wrap up this live recording of Happiness in Progress. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.